Hi guys, and welcome to this week's edition of the Deep Dive. Sorry we weren't here last week. I was over in Magic Live with Harry, and I was over with our special guest today, Mr. Craig Petty. So if you were at Magic Live, I want to say a big thank you for coming up and saying hello. It was so good to meet so many of you there. Now, if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, and you'll be notified every single time we go live on the channel. So today, as I said, we're going to be interviewing Craig Petty and speaking about, I would say his latest release, but I'm going to say latest releases, because Craig, as you know, is a bit of a one-man manufacturing guru with stuff coming out left, right and centre. So we're going to deep dive into this to find out exactly what's new with the legend Craig Petty. Here he is.
Hey Pete, how you doing, mate?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm so excited. And this is, I think I'm the first person to do 2 of these, so I'm excited.
Yeah.
I love the deep dive. It's my favourite YouTube thing. I absolutely love it.
Well, bearing in mind, if we were doing just one product, then you would already be on your 5th or 6th. So, but we're cramming so many in. But we were in Vegas together, so it's good to actually speak to you, because I lost my voice in Vegas, as you know.
I was so worried about you while I was over there. I was so worried because you sounded so ill, and I know you weren't ill. I kept saying to Harry, "Is he okay? You got to look after your dad. You know, you got to look after your dad." Like, you sounded terrible, and it just shows how amazing Harry is, that he was able to step up and do as much as he did. Yeah. It was basically phenomenal to see, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, well, a video just went up of me performing the Grail. I didn't realise how bad I sounded, and that was when I was on the mend. At one point, I couldn't get a word out. But this isn't about me and my throat. This is about you and your amazing trick. So Magic Live was almost overtaken by Craig Petty. Now, I want to put this in context, right? Because I've said this before, and I genuinely mean it. I have never met anyone who works as hard as Craig Petty. Now, when people think about a magician working, they don't really, they think, oh, he's done a 3-hour gig. When we're talking about working, we're talking about real work. So in one day, I know for a fact that you were filming with Murphy's for a project, filming with Penguin for a project, and filming with us for a project. This was after a day on Penguin's stand. And then after all that filming, so after the day on the stand, all that filming, you still joined me in the bar to start demonstrating your new coin set to people in the bar. And you literally...
And I was also performing the new packet trick you've got coming out soon with Chris.
Yeah, with Chris James. And you literally didn't stop. But that was one day, and it is constantly like this for you, because even when you're down with us filming a project, whatever it may be, you're always on the phone between, little filming sessions. You're on the phone with non-stop kids. You're on the phone here, you're on the phone there, you're doing this, you're booking that, you're arranging this. I have genuinely never met anyone that works as hard as you do. I really haven't. And,
Thanks, man.
I honestly don't know how you do it, because is what's happening with Ryland, is that public knowledge?
It is, yeah. By the time this goes up, everybody will know that he's in the semi-finals. Yeah, he's in the semi-finals. Yeah.
So I just wanted to say, the last day of Magic Live, I said to you, "Oh, well, I'll see you tomorrow." You said, "No, I've got a flight at 5 o'clock in the morning." And I said, "Oh, great. So at least you can have some rest when you get home." You went, no, I get home and then I shoot to Blackpool because we're doing the House of Secrets for a week. But while I'm there, I'm getting an illusion built for Ryland. Then I'm back
Yeah.
home for what, 2 or 3 days, and then you're off to LA. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
well, I'm in Blackpool at the
non-stop.
moment. Yeah, I'm in Blackpool at the moment. I've been running the businesses from Blackpool. This is a little house that we've hired. Rylands at Guy Barrett's warehouse, rehearsing every single day with the props that he's got for the AGT semi-final. He's performing at the House of Secrets every evening, and then when we come back from Blackpool, I'm going to have about a day or two, and then I'm going to be going to LA with Ryland. So
Wow.
yeah, that's another thing, because obviously on top of everything I do, I'm kind of, I compared him on stage the other day, and I made a joke, which is very true. After 35 years in this industry, I've become my 10-year-old son's roadie, stagehand, gopher, and personal announcer. Compare, and that's basically where I am. He's now probably doing more gigs than I am, which is just ridiculous. So.
He's absolutely smashing it, and obviously everyone wishes him good luck on AGT. But he's he's such a gem of a kid. I've never met a kid with so much passion. And the other thing as well is not 1 ounce of it has gone to his head. He's still just a 9-year-old kid that loves magic, and really loves it.
He did a show. He did a show the other day. It came off, and he had a standing ovation from like 400 people in the audience. Did a 45-minute show, standing ovation, and I was in the audience, and I gave him a big hug, and he just looked up at me and he went, "Did I do okay?" I'm like, "Dude, you killed it. Yes, you did okay, and then some." Yeah, he's a big source of inspiration. But at the same time, it kind of throws a spanner in the works, because you get yourself into a situation where I kind of had all my ducks in the row. I'm a big believer in time management. And the other thing I'm a big believer in, as well as time management, is outsourcing and delegation and having a team around you so that you don't do everything. It's kind of like, right, okay, this person can do this person can do this person can do this. And I have all my ducks in the row, and I know what I'm doing, and I can manage everything. And then you throw Ryland into the mix, and it suddenly becomes, well, okay, now my life has gone completely mental. Yeah. Because now the only person who can do with him what needs to be done is me, which means that I have to take that time from somewhere else.
Yeah.
But luckily, I have a good team of people around me. I really do.
That honestly, mate, like I said, I don't know how you do it. I honestly don't. But sort of more than that, a big part of your life now is taken up with creating magic, filming new projects. I mean, your YouTube channels are crazy. You said to me once that you do 27 videos per week, maybe more now because of the neck tricks.
Yeah, way more than that, really. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy just in terms of the amount of, especially as this was never the plan. Like before lockdown, the plan was to not really come back to magic and just stay doing what I was doing, and I was more than happy to do that. But then when COVID hit and lockdown hit, excuse me, I found myself very, very bored. I was doing virtual shows, and that's it. And I said to Ryland, why don't we do a review show, which we did. And then off the back of that, we did another video and another video. Excuse me, and that expanded and that expanded and that expanded to the point that where we are right now. But Magic TV was never meant to be a thing. Me releasing product to the Magic community was never meant to be a thing. You really started it all by contacting me right at the very beginning of lockdown and saying, "Hey, Craig, want to release a trick?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not?" And a lot of the stuff that I'm releasing now are ideas that I've had for years.
Yeah.
That I've got notepads and notepads and notepads full of ideas, and a lot of the stuff that we're doing now is stuff that I came up with while I was away from the Magic community. It's not stuff that I sit down and create specifically for releasing. There is a situation or two where that happens, especially when I'm working with a company on a product that's not my own, but generally that's not really the case.
Yeah.
But I'm lucky that I've kind of, you mentioned Non-Stop Kids and Slightly Unusual, and I've kind of replaced myself in those companies in a way, in that Sarah is the managing director, so she's the person that's ultimately in charge. My official title is sales and marketing director, so I oversee sales and marketing, but they pretty much, from a measurable statistics point of view, Non-Stop Kids and Slightly Unusual are in a better position than they've ever been in before, both pre and during and post-COVID. You know, I think we're generally working on somewhere between 18,500 bookings a year for those companies. So somewhere like that. And I think the goal is to, by next year, hit 25. So because of that, and I've got a team around me, and that's the big secret. You know, without getting too deep into this, if you want to be an entrepreneur, and what I mean by being an entrepreneur is setting up a business, running a business. There's two things you need to understand. The first thing is it's not easy. Running a business is not easy. It's a difficult thing to do. And you know, 80% of business owners quit in the first 5 years. 80% of small business owners quit in the first 5 years, and out of those 8%, out of those 20% that actually make it, only 80% achieve their full potential. So it's not an easy thing to do, and you're going to have ups and downs. We've had ups and downs, lots and lots of ups and downs. I mean, it was difficult, so difficult during COVID. There's, you know, many times I was like, let's just give it up. But you know, I'm lucky that so what I was saying is, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you can either work on the business or in the business.
Yeah.
And if you're working in the business, i.e. on the factory level, on the shop floor, whatever that may be, you've got no time working on the business. So the team that I have around me, they handle everything. There's an admin team. We've just hired a new administrator. We've got 4 admin team now. There's an ops department. There's a sales department. There's a marketing department, which I technically oversee, but they kind of get on with their own thing. So I don't have to worry about that. I don't think about, oh my gosh, right, okay. I very rarely jump on the phone and deal with sales calls. I very rarely deal with gigs on a one-on-one basis. What I'm thinking of these days from that side of things is, how can I grow the business? So I've just spent the last 3 months working on a strategy within Non-Stop Kids and Slightly Unusual, which is designed to increase our reviews on Google and Facebook by 500%. And I'm working on a piece of software that's designed to do that. So that's where I kind of come from, not from which means that I'm not having to. It's a bit like you know, you don't physically, unless somebody's off or somebody's ill, you're not physically in Alakazam every single day. You're not going to be that person that's taking the phone call. You're not going to be that person that's you know, packaging up that particular prop to send off to that magician. You're working on a different level. You're networking with people. You're working on new tricks, building relationships with new creators. You're working on making Alakazam as big as it is, and it has. I mean, we spoke about this at Magic Live. You know, you've gone through the roof since COVID. You're one of the few magic companies that really took COVID and really kind of used it almost like an advantage. And, you know, there's many elements that have led to that success, including in big parts having Harry really spearhead the socials.
Yeah,
but
100%.
It's the same thing with you. So I work on an entrepreneurial level, which means that I have a lot of time. That involves a lot of thoughts and phone calls. It doesn't necessarily involve a lot of so in terms of my time, that's taken up by gigs, and I can pick and choose which gigs I want to do, which is nice. I don't have to do every gig. In fact, Sarah tries to tell me all the time to cut down on the gigs that I do, and I say no. The day that I stop doing gigs, the company stops existing, because, you know, that's what it's all about. But it means I have more time to do stuff like this, and I have more time to do the videos for Magic TV, and I'm constantly thinking of new ideas for tricks. Constantly thinking of new. So, for example, Ticket to Ride, which recently got released from Alakazam, came about because I was on a train and just looking at the train ticket, and I was like, wouldn't it be really cool if, you know, you could give someone a train ticket and tell them all the information that's on it? How would? And I think the first idea that I had with Ticket to Ride is I just took a bunch of train tickets and I was like writing them and come up with a way of making this work. And, you know, I have time to work on stuff. And I'm always thinking, and Sarah always says to me, if we're sitting and watching a film or something in the evening, she'll see me just kind of have this blank look over my face and just zone out. And she'll just tap me on the shoulder and I go, what? And she goes, you're creating a trick, aren't you? And I went, yeah, yep, that's what I'm doing. So.
But the thing is, with your effects as well, they are so well thought out. And things like you said, Ticket to Ride. Now, we released Ticket to Ride. I think it's sold out in a week. We've just got the second batch in, actually. So the second batch is there. If anyone's been waiting for a ticket to ride, they're in stock now. But you come up with great, as well as great effects, you come up with great utility items. And that is what Ticket to Ride is. It's a tool that's going to allow you to gather so much information. Now, you can present it just as pick a ticket, I'll tell you the details. But you go into a lot more that you can do with it, using it part of a longer routine, like the one with a post-it notepad, which is amazing. But one thing about you and your products is you really investigate the product itself, and you squeeze every last piece of magic out of it. You really do. Most people, you buy an effect and they go, there's the effect and here's a little bonus idea. Whereas yours, I know we've got a project coming out with you at Christmas, and there are well over 30 routines. I've lost count of how many, but there's well over 30 routines with this product, and they are all solid, strong routines. And it really amazed me the day we were filming it, the live performances. We went to Houdini's, you filmed it all live. I couldn't get my head round how you remembered all 30 routines. I find it hard now to remember anything that I've done, but you are just...
Here's my weakness. My weakness is, and Sarah will tell you this, and anybody who knows me will tell you this, I'm very, very, very disorganized.
Yeah.
But I'm also hyper aware. Yeah, I'm so disorganized with everything I do. But I'm also hyper aware that if I'm being booked to go on a shoot to produce a product, it's my responsibility to make sure that that shoot goes as smoothly as possible. It's my job to be prepared. It's my job to know exactly what I'm doing, and I don't want to dick around the person that's doing the shoot, whether that be Alakazam or Penguin or whoever. So, I was joking with this with Mandy and Sean from Penguin. They say every time you come to a shoot, you've just got loads of pieces of paper with notes on them, and they've all been written in Sharpie, and nobody can understand them, but it seems like you know exactly what's going on, and I'm sure that's something you can relate to, Pete, because I've got those
100%.
When I come to Alakazam. And it's just my way of keeping track of everything, because when I do a project, a lot of the time there are multiple routines. So I've kind of got notes on what the trick is, on the second trick, because I want to do live performances, or at least studio performances of every single routine. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to mess around people and have 7 takes to do one particular trick. So I spend a couple of days before a shoot being very, very organized and running through stuff and making sure that everything is where it needs to be.
Yeah. No, you are. You are very organized. For a disorganized person, which I am as well, you're very organized when you need to be, with your tricks. And the paper thing I do know, because they're always left all over my studio. So I certainly relate to that. But anyway, let's talk about your brand new product. Actually, this is another thing that I wanted to I mentioned this yesterday. Now, with a lot of creators, I'm not talking about all creators, with a lot of creators, when they create a product, there's usually a lot of ego attached to it. So it's like when people try and give them ideas for their product, it's like, oh, no, this is what it does. One of the things about you is you will always ask anyone for their opinion on it. You take their advice and you include them. It's not always the big Craig Petty show. Like with your latest project, you said to me, this is the thing. I loved it. And you said, have you got any ideas? And I said, yeah, loads of ideas for it. And you said, can we film it? Kev G and Colin Klaus. You're very much, you really want to give as much value in your products as possible. And I can really vouch for that, because I'm usually sitting there going, 6 hours, Craig. we've been filming for 6 hours, Craig. And you're going, yeah, there's still a few more. But you really do. You really want to put as much into every product as you possibly can, which is really commendable. I mean, you do go above and beyond to provide value.
Well, there's a couple of reasons for that. And the first reason is, I'm not stupid enough to know, I've got an ego. Every magician in the world has an ego, but I'm not stupid enough to think that I'm the greatest magician of all time at everything that I do. And there's going to be people that are way better than me. So when I bought out EDC, for example, I knew that EDC as a concept was really good, but I knew that there's people like Pete Turner, people like yourself, people like Lloyd Barnes, Javier Fuenmayer, people like Michael Murray, Simon Lipkin, all of these people that would probably approach it in a completely different direction. And they did. Same with Cube 52. I'm pretty good with the Rubik's Cube. Yeah. But am I Kev G and Colin Klaus level? No. They can do stuff with a ungimmicked Rubik's Cube that I could only dream of. And am I a decent mentalist? Yes. What's my experience level like when it comes to ESP matchup routines? Very limited. What's your experience level like? Amazing. You've been working with them, for the last 30, 40 years. So the first part of it is, I believe that I owe it to the people that support my work that I need to deliver the best possible product that I can do. And the best possible product, generally as a rule, isn't just me. It's me networking and getting other people involved, whether that be having them on camera with me or me name checking them on the tutorial and getting their permission to include one of their ideas. I think that's very important. Now, occasionally that's not the case. I've released Gatekeeper recently through Penguin, which has just been a phenomenal success. And that's a 20-minute tutorial, and it's one trick, but with 3 handlings. There's very little else you can do with that. It's not going to need a 1-hour tutorial. It's one thing. And there's no point padding something out for the sake of it. There's not. But if you have something where you can illustrate other approaches, then I think you should do that. And I've seen people like the jerks that go, oh my God, 9-hour tutorial is not a good thing. And yeah, if you had to watch all 9 hours to learn the trick, I would completely agree with you. As a reviewer, if I was going to review a 9-hour project, I'd probably just drown myself in my toilet. But the whole idea of something like Cube 52 is it's a 4-volume set. You can watch the first volume in half an hour and know exactly what you need to do. You don't need any more instruction. But you can then watch the second volume with you, and you can learn how to do mentalism applications that doesn't even use a cube. You can watch the third volume and look at some really intricate cube-related stuff from Kev G and Colin Klaus. You can look at the fourth volume and see what I've approached it as and how I tend to look at it when you don't have a cube in play, and how you can take classic card tricks like Oil and Water, like Out of This World, like Triumph, like Play It Straight, and apply it to this deck and how that would look. So you can get the whole idea in the first half an hour. So that's the first part. The second part is, you got to remember, I'm old, and I came into this whole thing. The norm was watching stuff like L&L DVDs. The norm was watching stuff like A1 Multimedia DVDs. The norm was watching stuff like Fancy a Pot of Jam and things like that, where there are multi-tricks. That just is how I learned. And when the industry switched to physical products, I was a bit sad, because I'm like, we're not going to see that. And this is kind of my attempt at bringing that old school vibe back to a magic trick. And also, don't forget, I also came from an era where magicians teamed up all of the time. You'd have Chris Congreve on a Gary Jones DVD. You'd have Lee Smith and Mark Bendell. You'd have Gary Jones and Lee Smith. You'd have Cameron Francis, and you'd have Dave Forrest. And then on the other side of the pond, you'd have Jay Sankey teaming up with David Acker. Then you'd have Jay Sankey teaming up with Richard Sanders. Then you'd have Jay Sankey teaming up with Michael Scott. One of my favorite books of all time is Creators Collide, with Jay Sankey and Richard Sanders. So for me, in my formative years within this industry, all of the products I was buying that I learned from, that I enjoyed, were team-ups between magicians. And it made me understand from a very early level that, Jay Sankey may be great, but when you put Jay Sankey and Richard Sanders in a room together, they bounce off each other really well.
Yeah. And someone on our live yesterday, someone did mention the 9-hour tutorial. And whenever I'm faced with something like this, you know, and there's a huge tutorial, what I do is I tend to sit down and I watch it first. I don't want to learn anything. I watch it. And as I'm watching it, I make notes. Because out of that 9 hours, there are going to be a set amount of routines that really float my boat. Yep. You know, there's going to be some that suit me. And it's the same when I'm editing your projects. So like when I was editing the Mirage project, I was editing it, and even though all the effects are great, there's a few that stand out. I go, I want to learn that. I want to learn this. So I make a note of those ones. So I watch it first, enjoy what I'm watching, but make a note. And then I look at my notes and I rate each trick as to not how good they are, but how much I want to learn them. So there'll be, out of 5, there'll be a few that are at the 5 level where I go, that's a definite, that's a definite. There'll be a few 4s or whatever. And then I'll go, okay, so now which ones do I start learning? And they're the ones I concentrate on. And it's great when I'm editing your projects because I do that as I go through, as I'm editing. And then what I try to do, and it usually happens, is when I'm playing around with a trick, I'll come up with my own handling for it or a presentation for it or a tweak. And then I'll film like a little bonus video of my favourite Craig Petty routines from the Mirage project. And that will go on there. So it's like a little highlight video for people. They can watch that and there's 5 routines on there. And then they can go on to the other one or whatever. But I always suggest the first time you watch anything, it's like when we do the academies. You sort of say, watch it and enjoy it on the night. It's going to be in your account to learn, you know, forever. So just watch the video once through and make little notes on each trick and just rate them 1 to 5 and rate them as in how much you want to learn them. Because a few of them you're going to go, right, that's a definite for me, suits my style, not too difficult, that ticks all the boxes, that's a 5. And then once you've watched it all, you can go back and go, okay, so they're the 5 that I need to concentrate on. But
exactly,
I can't see no negative to having more option.
I would rather have a longer tutorial that I can delve into over time than a shorter tutorial. Don't forget, I'm a reviewer of Magic as well, so I review everything. And I would rather have a longer tutorial where I can go back to it over time and learn more stuff and have every thought from the creator, as opposed to a really short thing where it's done in 10 minutes and it's like, here's the gimmick, this is how it works, this is what you do, no studio performance, thanks very much, bye. It's why, you mentioned Mirage and Apparition there, it's why I always insist that Andy Smith joins me on the coin projects.
Yeah.
Because out of everyone at Alakazam, Andy's the most knowledgeable coin guy. And without
100%.
fail, every single time I've done a coin project with Alakazam, Andy has like come up to me before the shoot and said, I've been playing around with this, by the way. I've got a couple of ideas. I'm like, let's put them on the project, Andy. Let's do it. I love that. That's amazing. Because, you know, you'd have to be stupid to think that like only your ideas are valid. And, you know, he regularly, when I'm teaching this stuff, you know, and if people have got Mirage and Apparition, go and look at it and you'll see. Andy will, in the middle of the tutorial, say, oh, that's nice, but have you thought about doing this? Yeah. I'm like, Andy, that's an amazing idea. Now, I could pull the ego card and go, right, Pete, cut that from the edit. That's not an idea that I came up with. But I don't. I don't want to do that. I'm like, that's amazing. You know, other people will come. And I've been playing around with Mirage for literally 15 years. And then he sits there and says, have you thought of this? And I'm like, no, bugger. Because different people will approach things in different ways. And you have to be open to have those ideas, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And, you know, your projects are always, they're always sort of packed with great routines and great ideas. And usually, like you said, ideas thrown in from other people. So we've been speaking for quite a while. I think it's about time we had a look at the trailer of your brand new release, which is called Cube 52. Let's take a look at that now, Craig.
Look at it.
Which one? call is it? Harry. Open it up and look at the last picture you took. Because this is going to...
No, wait, that's fine. If it's the...
Wow! What the f?
My name's Craig Petty, and welcome to Cube 52. Now, Cube 52 looks like a deck of speed challenge cards. It looks like a deck of cards that you would get at a gadget shop that have colours on them. But inside this deck, there is a diabolical secret. In actual fact, there's a bunch of secrets. You mixed up a Rubik's Cube, you picked a side, you shuffled the deck. I told you there's 47 quintillion million combinations with a Rubik's Cube. There are 47 quintillion million combinations with this deck, which means that when I turn this over, have a look at this. Orange, green, red, white, yellow, red, blue, green, orange. What's going on? It's basically the same as a Rubik's Cube. A Rubik's Cube has 6 colours, so does this deck. A Rubik's Cube has 9 squares on each face. Well, this has 9 cards for each colour. There's 54 squares on a Rubik's Cube. There's 54 cards in this deck. You combine this deck of cards with a Rubik's Cube and you can perform absolute miracles. Because the cube has been solved, the deck is now completely separated out.
Oh, there's no way.
Put down a white and you put down a white.
So if that doesn't work, my theory doesn't work.
And if the 4 reds are here, that can only mean one thing over here. We actually have the 4 blue.
It's so unsettling.
I put down a green and you put down a green. I didn't influence you.
How did you do it?
I'm joined on this project by the legend Peter Nardi, who shares some amazing mentalism routines. I'm joined by Kev G and Colin Cloud from the Refractor Project, 2 people who I think it's fair to say are the leading experts when it comes to magic with ungimmicked Rubik's Cubes, and they share some unpublished, never-seen-before material. It is the thing that these cards were mixed up. Let me see if I can do the same thing with these. Watch. 1, 2, 3. And that, I think, is nothing short of an absolute miracle. The greens and whites and greens. Now, this deck was designed by Phil Smith, and he developed a brand new, unique 3-way marking system for this deck that can be seen from the other side of the room, and it's hidden in plain sight. For the first time, name that colour.
Red.
I snap my fingers. I'm not going to believe this, but now all of the reds in the pack. But when I mixed up the cube, I took a picture of you holding it, right? And I didn't know that you'd gone for red.
What the f? You might press something on the cube.
This is Cube 52.
So annoying.
I just want to know how. It's amazing.
Oh, that is good.
Amazing to be able to
So
put
good.
that on a phone. Like,
Yeah, and it was all mixed
what the
up.
hell?
I'm going to do one last thing for you.
That's amazing.
I'm going to do one last
Oh my
thing for
God,
you.
that's so frustrating, but so amazing at the same time.
Well, I'm going to do one last thing for you, okay? But what
You're
I'm going
brilliant.
to do, I appreciate that.
Huh?
I'm going to do
It's
my
annoying
favourite trick,
me.
but I'm going to do
That's so good, mate. It's so good.
Big shout out to Lloyd Barnes for really kicking ass on the trailer. Lloyd Barnes, and I tell you what, you know who filmed a lot of the footage for that? There's a couple of people who filmed it. Magic for Beginners on YouTube, great guy. But a lot of the reaction footage was filmed by Nemeth Phoenix.
Nemeth's a little unsung hero, isn't he?
Yeah, he really is. Yeah. Like he's so good and people don't even know.
Yeah,
but
Nemeth's great.
But yeah, I mean, the whole idea of this is I really wanted a project because I'm passionate about magic with Rubik's Cubes. I was passionate before, but ever since Ryland started doing his Rubik's Cube thing and became known as the King of Cubes from Alicia Dixon, Ever since that moment, I've become even more interested in Rubik's Cubes. And the stuff that Ryland can do that I wouldn't even be able to dream of doing. Like, it just I'm too old and my fingers aren't nimble enough and I don't have the memory like he does. But cube magic, I think it's one of those things where some people say, magicians that have never tried it go, oh, I wouldn't do magic with Rubik's Cubes, it's dull. When in actual fact, it's not. It's really, really interesting. The reactions you get are insane because everyone knows what a cube is. Everyone knows it's a difficult thing to solve. And so therefore, it's an object that everybody knows. And when you start doing things like solving it, it becomes crazy good. But there's a lot of people. The problem is you have to learn to solve Rubik's Cube. There's no two way about it. Even with a lot of the gimmicked cube magic, like you see Henry Harrius come out with and people like that, who's a genius, by the way, Henry, you still have to know an algorithm. And ultimately, you end up having to know how to solve the cube because if you mess up the algorithm, you have to solve it. And there's a small amount of stuff like that on Cube 52, sorry. But the majority of it is stuff where you don't even need to know how to solve a cube. Like the main routine, the routine that I perform off the project, which I think you saw me do on Harry in the bar, the main routine. If you've never picked up a Rubik's Cube in your life, it makes absolutely no difference. If you've never picked up a cube, it makes nothing. It's the routine where you give someone a cube and you tell them to mix it. You give someone a pack of cards, you tell them to mix it. And ultimately, you take out 9 cards, you have them randomly mixed up, laid out in a 3x3 grid, and it matches the cube that they've actually mixed up from the very beginning. If you've never solved a cube before in your life, it's not a problem. And that was the point of this project, to create a project where people who's got no ability with cubes at all and no experience with cubes can do cube magic or cube mentalism and see what the reaction is like to it. And then, from that, I realized when I had my first prototype deck, I realized, well, you know what? You can take classic card routines and apply them to this deck. And you can do stuff like oil and water, but with 6 colors. And there's an oil and water on there where you have the deck of cards and you're having them divide them up into 6 piles and they end up mixing up and separating out all 6 colors. Like there's some insane stuff you can do where you don't even have a cube in play. The stuff that you put on. Remember, you've basically got, in this deck, you've got 6 colors repeated 9 times.
Yeah.
That's 54 colors. So you, in essence, have ESP cards in there, but with colors.
Yeah.
So you can do ESP matchup routines. And a lot of what you talked about is how to do ESP matchup routines with this deck. Because the marking system that Phil Smith designed, anyone can see.
Yeah.
It's so easy to see. I've got bad eyes. I really struggle to see any marked deck unless it's got Steve Deller's name attached to it, or the DMCs I can handle. But that's about it. Like I'm really struggle with marked cards. But with this, I can see there's only 6 cards. The marking system is genius. Phil worked out a way of doing the marks in and there's so much built into the backs of those cards. There's a one-way system. There's 3 different marks. And then I realized you can have the deck set up in stack. So you can have the deck stacked and the box will actually tell you the crib, but also when it is in stack, the marking system will tell you the card, the next card, the card before. But if you shuffle the deck, and normally when you work with a stacked deck, you're in trouble, you're done. With this, you shuffle the cards and it's not a problem because 80% of the material works from a shuffled deck and you can still see what the cards are. So there's so many different options.
Yeah.
And Phil, I have to give a shout out to Phil Smith for, taking my insane idea. I remember contacting him and saying, do you think we can do this? He's like, that's insane. Leave it with me. And that iconic marking, that the way that the cards are designed on the back with all of the stacked up cubes, he did what Phil Smith always does, which is I asked him to do one thing and he came back to me with 10. He's like, yeah, I've done the marking like you want. Oh, and by the way, I've done this for you for the stack and I've done this for you as well. So there's 3 markings. Oh, and I've built a one-way thing in there. Oh, and by the way, I've built a revelation into the back of every single card while I'm at it. Oh, thanks, Phil. And it's just insane.
Genius.
He really is. And he summed it up. He actually said on the cafe, he said, you know what? I've always wanted to be able to do cube magic and I couldn't be asked to learn a cube. And now with Cube 52, I can actually do that. And there's my daughter Thea just looking through the window behind me. taking the dog out. So yeah, I mean, it's the reason I wanted Kev G and Colin Klaus on there is because I wanted people who are hardcore cubists to be able to get something out of the project. And let's be honest, I don't know of two people that have more ability with ungimmicked Rubik's Cubes than those two. And I didn't want to have gimmicks included. As good as Henry Harrius is, a lot of his stuff involves shells and gimmicks and this and that, which is amazing. And I use them and Ryland uses them. But I didn't want people to have to buy anything else. You got a cube, you got a deck, you're good to go. So I wanted Kev G and Colin Klaus on. So if you're an experienced cube handler, they've got a 3-hour section there, which is going to blow your mind. And it's hilarious watching their section because Kev G, at least 5 times, fools me with my own trick. Right, he just does. It's just ridiculous. But then if you're a mentalist and you like ESP routines, I personally think that being able to do an ESP matchup with this deck and basing it on colors instead of ESP symbols is stronger. Because more people, you can now do an ESP symbol matchup routine for kids and they'll understand it because it's based on colors. And that's, if you like that sort of thing, then go straight through and check out your section. If you want to just know how the deck works and you want to understand the systems behind it and what makes it tick, look at the first volume. If you want to see how I've taken classic card routines and applied it to the deck, look at the 4th volume. There's something I've tried to make it so there's something in there for everyone.
And there really is. The other thing I was going to say about that cube thing, I'm not a cubist at all. I don't do any cube magic. But you taught me your version with the cube in 5 minutes. I was doing it in 5 minutes. And the nice thing is, which you didn't mention, they mix up the cube and they put it down and you match the underneath of the cube. The thing that you've never seen. You could be blindfolded before they put that cube down if you wanted to be. And then, you end up matching it. And at no point do you get a peek of the bottom side.
Nope.
And there's no memory work or anything else involved. It's so nice. I mean, Craig, it is like all of your releases, it's a great product. I mean, I think this is why when we were in Vegas, you were, and I don't think this is an understatement, you were sort of like a bit of a god to the magicians there because you were just doing everything. You were holding court in the bar. You didn't stop performing at all. But you're so generous with everyone. That's the thing. Whoever was at the bar, didn't matter what level they were, you weren't hanging around with the elite clique. You were sort of sitting with anyone, and anyone would ask you whatever question they wanted. How do you do this? What's that? And you're just, as a person, you are just so giving, and unless people experience that, they never really know. But you were people were buying Cube Free at Magic Live and you were going through it with them. You were showing them like little ideas, how to handle it. And it's such a great project. Like I said, like all of your projects, you just give so much. And you're so generous with your thoughts, your time and everything else. Now we're going to be wrapping this up because I do know, even though I'm most probably going to have an hour off now. You haven't. You've got a full day.
I've got AGT and then rehearsals and then Rylands performing tonight at the House of Secrets.
Man, well, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the deep dive. We have still got, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3, maybe even more Craig Petty releases hitting this year.
We've got a ridiculous amount, haven't we? I mean, we're talking about me filming again in September for about another 6 or 7 projects.
Yeah.
But we've already got about 7 or 8 in the bag that we've done. Some that are just sitting there waiting to come out, waiting for the right time to come out.
We had 2 that we had at Blackpool that still haven't been officially released. So they will be coming out soon as well. So, Craig, I personally, from Alakazam, I want to thank you for all the support you've given us as well, because I know earlier on you said, since lockdown we've grown, and I would say, your help and your support has been a big part of that. You know, between you and Harry, you've managed to lift the company right up, and it's been great, and it's an absolute.
It was already in a great place, but now it's just it's in the stratosphere. It really is.
And a lot of that, you know, your support really helps, and you know, just the working with you is such a pleasure. It really is a pleasure because, like I said at the beginning, I've never worked with anyone that works as hard as you do, and nothing's ever a problem. You always want to get the job done, but get it done to the highest possible level. And even when the trick's released, you know, you're always so giving with our Facebook groups, on places like the cafe. You're always answering questions and supporting people that buy your products, and that's quite a rare thing to find. So I want to thank you from the whole magic community for that, because you know, you've been a great help to everyone. I met a lot of people at Magic Live who are members of your Netrix, who have said you've literally changed their life and got them excited about magic again, and you've been their mentor, and you know, everyone just speaks so highly about you, and that's no surprise. You know, absolutely no surprise.
I've got a reputation to keep up, Pete. So you know, like let's cut this, because you know, I'm going to start needing more haters soon, because the old ones are starting to like me. So we'll need to let's not say that anymore.
Mate, thank you so much for joining us. You go and spend some time with the family, and make sure Ryland's ready for AGT, and let's hope he smashes it. I've got no doubt he will.
I'm telling you what we've got planned. If that little sausage can pull it off, it's never been seen before. So
Right.
It's all on him. It's all on him. But I think he will.
I'm so excited to watch it. Right, Craig, thank you very much, my friend, and I will speak to you real soon.
I'll speak to you soon, Pete. You take care. Thank you, everyone.
So that was the amazing Craig Petty. Honestly, guys, if you haven't checked it out yet, check out Cube 52. Even if you don't do the cube, Craig taught me his favourite cube effect, which I learned in 5 minutes, and I cannot do a cube, and I don't have to worry about it being mixed up, because it works with a mixed up cube. So it really doesn't matter. But Cube 52 is a great utility. There's so much content on the video, so much for you guys to learn, so make sure you do check it out. Now, I'll be back next week with another deep dive, and remember, if you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button and that notification bell, and you'll be notified every single time we go live right here on our YouTube channel. So until next week, I'm Peter Nardi. Have yourselves a great week. Oh, and don't forget, we've got a big live launch happening on the 30th of August. So put that in your diary. It's going to be happening on YouTube and on Facebook. But until then, have yourselves a great week. I'll see you next week.